Hi everyone, my name is Colleen Moore, and my project and study were on prescription drug abuse and its dynamics and trends. So, to start off, the purpose of this study and this topic. The National Survey on Drug Use and Health, which is also called the NSDUH, is conducted on a yearly basis with the goal of understanding the patterns and correlates of drug use in the U.S. This survey uses quantitative collection methods to better understand a variety of risk factors and indicators among the general population aged 12 years and older. And then why I chose this topic. So, prescription drug misuse is a huge problem in the US currently, and it affects people of any age and any group. The goal of my study was to gain a better understanding of the occurrence of prescription drug abuse across the country, and more specifically, what prescription drugs are most commonly abused, how they're obtained, and what underlying factors may influence a person's decision to misuse prescription drugs. So for my methods, I used secondary data analysis. There is a bunch of literature and a bunch of research that have shown that prescription drug misuse is an ongoing issue within the U.S., and like I said, it occurs across a variety of ages and a variety of populations. So the data set that I used was the most recent version, which is from 2022, of the National Survey on Drug Use and Health. I pretty much evaluated this survey and narrowed it down to observe specifically prescription drug misuse trends and characteristics. So it had pretty much over 3,000 different variables that they were measuring among this population, and I narrowed it down to about 20-ish that specifically pertained to prescription drug misuse. So within this study, the participants consisted of about 71,000 participants aged 12 and up from all 50 states, including DC. And the methods that I pretty much transferred this data to SPSS and then conducted frequency table outputs. I did cross tabulations with the chi-square, and I also did logistic regression. So the variables within my study, like I said earlier, there was over about 2,000 variables in this data set. So I kind of had to go through and sift through specifically which ones had to do with prescription drugs and which ones I wanted to choose. So that got me all the way down to 19 variables. And some of those included various demographic variables, as well as any arrest history, mental health treatment history, and then I kind of just went into greater depth about the four main groups of prescription drugs that are misused, which are pain relievers, tranquilizers, stimulants, and sedatives. So for my first hypothesis, I hypothesized that young adults are at the greatest risk for engaging in prescription drug abuse. So this was found, a lot of the literature that I had come across had shown that those between, I think it was the ages of 18 and 25, showed the greatest prescription drug abuse, specifically among stimulants. So for these findings, I did a cross tabulation with the chi-square test. And for this one, I did age and each of the prescription drugs. So age and if the participants had used, yes or no, pain relievers, stimulants, sedatives, or tranquilizers. So as you can see from my results, the darker highlighted areas indicate a higher percentage of individuals. So from these results, we can conclude that individuals, at least participants from this study between the ages of 26 and 34, showed the greatest amount or likelihood of prescription drug abuse. Then with my chi-square results from my crosstabs, the p-values for all the categories of prescription drugs, so across pain relievers, stimulants, sedatives, and tranquilizers, were all below 0.01%. So this indicated that this is a statistically significant relationship, and that we can see there is a great relationship between age and the likelihood of prescription drug misuse. So this hypothesis was correct. My second hypothesis was that individuals with past offense history or mental health concerns will have higher rates of prescription drug abuse. So some of my findings from this one, I also conducted a cross-tabulation in SPS as well as a chi-square test. So these findings showed that across all categories, so stimulants, pain relievers, tranquilizers, and sedatives, that there is a significant relationship between offense history and prescription drug abuse. So this showed that individuals with an arrest history were more likely to misuse prescription drugs than those without an arrest history. And then for stimulants, 14.3% who have been arrested versus the 6.2% who have not been arrested. And then for pain relievers, it was quite high, 25% versus 6.2%. And then tranquilizers, 13.2% versus 2.5%. And lastly, sedatives, which was 7.5% versus 1.2%. So this hypothesis was also correct. And then my last hypothesis was that the most abused prescription drugs in the U.S. Would be pain relievers and stimulants. And then these findings were correct. They showed that pain relievers and stimulants are the most abused among participants. So pain relievers were the most consistently abused. However, stimulants, specifically Adderall, was the most overall abused drug out of all categories and all drugs. So with 1.1% of participants abusing Adderall. So this could potentially be influenced by high stress levels faced by, college-aged individuals and students and young adults. Because like I said in my past couple slides, those aged between, I think it was 26 and 30 had the highest rate of drug abuse, and that is about what this age bracket would be. So this hypothesis was also correct. So overall, some of the key findings were that prescription drug misuse is most likely to occur in young adults. So like I said earlier, those aged between 26 and 34 being at the greatest risk for misuse. And then my chi-square test confirmed that there is a statistically significant relationship between arrest history and prescription drug misuse. So those with arrest histories consistently have greater misuse than those without arrest histories. And lastly, stimulants and pain relievers were the most misused prescription drugs. So like I said, Adderall leading above most, possibly due to the high stress environments of those in school and those in work as young adults. So to conclude, my research had many strengths and weaknesses. Starting off with some strengths, I think that my research can provide great insight toward the potential influencers of prescription drug misuse and the ability to better understand what factors may contribute to an individual's decision to partake in this drug misuse. And secondly, also providing valuable insight to policymakers and public health professionals seeking to address prescription drug misuse. So by figuring out and finding what variables might contribute to this misuse, public health professionals and policymakers could possibly use this to help address the misuse among Americans. And then it did have some weakness, however. It was hard to isolate a single cause of prescription drug misuse because there are so many different factors in someone's life that could potentially contribute to a person's decision to partake in it. So that was one weakness of my study. I was able to create correlations between certain variables, but it was hard to isolate a single cause. And then lastly, just the small number of variables included. So the survey itself had many different variables, like I said, over 2,000 that gave a more holistic understanding of drug use and health. But I was only had the time and ability to do just about 20. So I think this kind of limits the scope of how far my results can go. But overall, it was a good study. So that is it. Thank you for listening.